The Gemara in Brachos brings down a very fascinating description of the end of the days of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Says the Gemara, Kishachala Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, when Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai took ill, he was on his deathbed, Nichnasu Talmidav Ravakro, his Talmidim came to visit him. This was at a stage when he was known as the Gadol Ador. He was 120 years of age, and he was the leading sage in the Klal Yisrael. When his Talmidim came in to visit him, came in Shirah, some his Chalivchos, when he saw them and he understood why they came, that they had come to bid their Rebbe farewell, his Chalivchos, he began crying. Amrulo Talmidov, his Talmidim said, Ner Yisrael, light of Israel, Omar Yemini, the right pillar, Poteh Shachazak, the powerful anvil, Mipnei Ma Atabocha, why are you crying? Typically, when a person prepares to leave this earth, there's an awful lot that he regrets doing, many things that he didn't do, and there's an awful lot to take in account. But this is Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. This is the tzaddik of the generation. This is the Talmid Chacham who had mastered Kol HaTorah Kula. There was nothing that he had left unlearned. And for such a man, being ushered in front of Hashem should not be a cause of fear, should not be a cause of crying. So his Talmidim asked him, and then he answered as follows. Let's assume that they were taking me in front of a mortal Basar Adam, a mortal flesh and blood king. This mortal king is here today, tomorrow not. If this mortal king were to be angry with me, that's not forever. If this mortal king were to lock me in jail, it would also not be for eternity. And if he were to kill me, it's also not forever. And furthermore, I could appease that king with words of I could bribe him. But nevertheless, I would be crying. Now that they're taking me in front of Hashem, who lives on for eternity, if Hashem gets angry at me, that's for eternity. If he locks me up, that's also forever. The Mashal explains that means if he puts me in Gehenim, that's forever. And if Hashem kills me, that's forever. And this, the Mashal explains, means quite simply that when a behemoth dies, the nefesh of the behemoth evaporates. It just puffs away. It says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, if Hashem kills me, meaning if Hashem evaporates my neshama, that's for eternity. I can't appease him, I can't bribe him. Shouldn't I cry? And those were the words that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said to his Talmidim, that the Emas Hadin, the fear of judgment, the knowledge, the understanding that I'm going to stand in front of my Creator, and every moment, every action, every thought is going to be weighed and measured, is a very, very frightening concept, no matter who you may be, and especially being aware of the consequences. So shouldn't I cry? Amru lo Rabbeinu Barchenu. At the last moment they said, Rebbe, give us a bracha, give us a parting bracha. Amalem yiratzon, it should be the will of Hashem, shetemor shamayim aleichem kamor basav adam. You should fear Hashem as you do man. Amru lo Talmidov ad kan, that's all? You say that we should fear Hashem as we do man? You're the one who just told us how much more a person should fear Hashem than a mortal man who passes. Amalahem, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said back, Halavai. It should only be that way. Teidu, and I'll prove it to you. Kisha'adam over Avera, when a man is about to commit a crime, when a man is about to do an Avera, Omer Shalo Yerani Adam. He looks left, he looks right, he makes sure no man sees him before he does it. Halavai, that you should fear Hashem as you do man. And B'shas Petiroso, at the moment when he was going to leave, Amalem, he said, Panu Kelim Neatuma, remove the Kelim. There's a din of Ola Mace, I'm going to be a dead person. It would make the Kelim Tameh, remove the Kelim. Richinu Kisei L'Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda Shabbat, prepare a chair Chizkiyahu, the king of Yehuda, is going to be malav me, is going to escort me. The Mashal explains the reason why Chizkiyahu was the person who was to be malav him is because Chizkiyahu took his entire generation and turned it around. He changed the course of the Klal Yisrael, and it was only befitting that such a man should escort out Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, because that is the effect that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had on his generation. Therefore, it was Chizkiyahu Melech Yehuda who brought him to Olam Emes. And that is the Gemara. What I like to do is to focus on a very simple observation. And that observation is, what was the Talmidim's position and what was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's answer? Meaning, there was almost what you'd look at like a vikuach, a debate on the deathbed of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. First he explains why he's crying, and then they ask for a bracha, and he gives them the bracha, you should fear Hashem as you do man. And the Talmidim say, Ad Kan, that's all. We should only fear Hashem as we do man. And apparently they had a position in what they said, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai had an answer. And I'd like to see if we can analyze each and get a better understanding of what this Gemara is sharing with us. And let's begin with the Talmidim's position. The Talmidim's position was that it is ludicrous to say that we should fear Hashem as we do man. And I'd like to spend a moment on that concept. We now are privy to knowledge and information that people of previous generations couldn't begin to imagine. At our fingertips, easily available, is so much knowledge that mankind never ever had. And because of that, there are certain givens that we become so accustomed to, that become so pedestrian, that they lose the gravity and they lose their effect. And I'd like to stop on just something that is commonly known, very, very much within our understanding, but if we think about it, I think is an astounding idea. Let's discuss something called distance. From here to the wall is maybe 50 feet. Rather close. From here to California is a whole lot further. It's about 3,000 miles. When you discuss a distance of 3,000 miles, it's a very, very far distance, to the extent that you have to get on a plane flying 500 miles an hour, and it takes you hours and hours to get there. But the distance that man measures space is very, very different than one measures the distance between here and the wall or here to California. The distance between the Earth and the Moon is some 250,000 miles. But in space idea, that's very, very close, because the distance between the Earth and the Sun is 91 million miles. Now, if you want to get an understanding of how vast and how far apart that is, just a very quick point. I don't know who does these measurements, but they say the surface temperature of the sun is 17 million degrees, and the inner core is 24 million degrees. To understand how hot that is, they say that if you were to take a grain of sand and heat it up to that temperature, bring it back to the earth, everything within a 30-mile radius would erupt into flame. There's so much energy, so much heat, and so much power contained within but one grain of sand heated up to that temperature that it would cause everything within proximity to erupt into flame. However, despite the fact that it's a huge ball of the sun, some 865,000 miles in diameter, radiating power, because it's so far away, the light, the energy has a chance to spread, has a chance to dissipate. So it's a nice balmy 85 degrees in the summer, a not so balmy 20 degrees in February, but it's livable on planet Earth. If the distance between the sun and the earth were different, let's assume it was just 60 million miles, life on the planet would be very different. Somewhere in that distance, the heat on the planet would begin rising. Somewhere around 4,000 degrees, rock melts, and somewhere within that proximity, life on this planet would cease to exist, because the heat of the earth would rise to such an extent that life would be impossible. But because it's so far away, the energy has a chance to dissipate, and we enjoy livable conditions on this planet. Now, when you think about space, 91 million miles may sound like it's very far, but in terms of known space, in terms of the known universe, it's but a little drop in the bucket. And as a matter of fact, it really gets interesting when you hear scientists measuring the closest stars. The sun is a star. The next closest star in the known universe is Alpha Centauri. The distance between the sun and Alpha Centauri is no longer measured in millions of miles. It's too vast, too far apart, that it becomes too cumbersome. So science switches to a different system of measurement, and that is they use the system of the speed of light. Light travels at the speed of 186,000 miles a second. If you multiply the seconds by the minute, by the hour, by the week, you can approximate distance. So if we were to use that scale, the distance from here to the moon is 1.25 seconds. From here to the sun is 8 minutes. And the distance between the sun and Alpha Centauri is 4 light years. What that means is it takes light traveling 186,000 miles a second, multiplied by the minute, multiplied by the hour, it takes 4 years for that light to travel, because it's such a vast expanse. It's so far apart that it's almost difficult for the human to imagine it. However, in the known Milky Way galaxy, there are not 2 stars. As a matter of fact, there are a whole lot more than 2 stars. Scientists now approximate that in the Milky Way galaxy, there are approximately 100 billion stars. Each one is powerful as the sun, each one emanating power and energy, each one with a surface temperature of 70 million degrees or hotter, and each one spread so far apart as the sun to Alpha Centauri, spread across this wide, vast expanse known as the Milky Way galaxy, that's beyond the human's conception or comprehension as to how vast and how wide it is. And if we were to stop here and understand that that is one of Hashem's creation, it would probably bring us to a sense of awe and humility. However, the Milky Way galaxy is not the only entity in space. I find it humorous when scientists revert to mashalim. A mashal is a technique to explain the unexplainable. If you're colorblind, how can I explain to you purple? Well, it's somewhere between red and blue. Well, you don't know red, you don't know blue, so well, I'll use a mashal. Imagine an instrument. So there's if a flute, it would be yellow, and a cello would be brown. So we could, you see, I'm trying to bridge the gap between an understanding that I have into your world. We're familiar with that because when we deal with spiritual concepts, it's beyond the physical, and Chazal often use mashalim. But what about when scientists revert to mashalim? Scientists use a mashal to explain to us the size of the known universe. They say, take the Milky Way galaxy, 100 billion stars spread out across this unbelievable expanse. If you compare the Milky Way galaxy to the known universe, they say it is like taking a coffee cup and comparing it to the United States of America. Because they say that there are 100 billion galaxies, each as wide and as vast as the Milky Way galaxy, spread across some 13 billion light years of space, ever expanding. And when a human being takes one more step, but one small step, they come to a tremendous understanding. And that small step is to close your eyes and say to yourself, what happened the moment before Maaseh Bereshis? Before Hashem said Vayihi, there was nothing. Complete absence of physicality. There was no atoms, no molecules, no quarks. There was nothing. And from absolute, complete absence of anything, Hashem said Vayihi, and a powerful sun that lets out light that shines 91 million miles became. And not one sun, but 100 billion suns. And not one galaxy, but 100 billion galaxies spread across this vast universe. And when you think about that, all of this was brought forth with Dibur. You come to a tremendous sense of humility, of awe. If I'm standing in front of the creator of all of this, what does this tell me about the Creator? And that is an important step in your Shemayim. However, I think that is very distant, very far, and very hard to feel. If you'd like a Musar exercise to grow in your Shemayim, I'd like to share with you what I consider a very, very powerful Musar exercise. And that is as follows. On a nice, calm Sunday morning, go to your local bowling alley and take a black 16-pound ball, but this part of the exercise you have to do very, very carefully. And take this ball, now before you actually lift it up, hold it close to your body and say the words, Blima, 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 and then hold your arm out to the side and hold it there for 10 minutes. Now, the reason why it's very important that you do it out to the side over here is because after about 10 seconds, the ball is going to come crashing down the floor and you don't want it over your toes. Because Blima, Blima, Blima may mean something, but it's not going to suspend a 16-pound bowling ball here in the air. But you know what the words we say in Rosh Hashanah davening in the Piyutim is? Tola Eretz al Belima. Hashem suspends the earth al Belima. It's an acronym, 2 words put together, Belima, without anything. Meaning, what keeps this planet Earth where it is? If here's the sun, and you have Mercury and a few other planets, 8 or 9, depending on who's counting, spread across, here's the Earth. Now there's a huge expanse of 13 billion light years. Why doesn't the Earth just sort of float away, sort of like, and become further and further? And I guess as, about 120 million miles, it gets a little chilly. And then maybe 150 million miles, it becomes absolute zero. You drop a tennis ball and it cracks. Why doesn't the Earth just float away? Now, the answer to that is obvious. We all know it's 6th grade science. It's something called gravity. What kind of question? It's gravity. But gentlemen, what is gravity? There are no cables, there are no wires. There's a force that suspends a planet. Do you know how heavy the planet Earth is? I once looked up the number, but it had no meaning. But I can tell you it's very heavy. There are SUVs, there are mountains, there are trees. It's a heavy planet. And what keeps it where it is? Belima, nothing. No wires, no cables. It's a force that Hashem put into the world called gravitational force. The mass of the sun exerts its pull. The mass of the earth, which is less, also exerts its pull. The two bodies are attracted to each other, and that invisible force that you could walk through, that you could cut, pulls and keeps the earth where it is. And that is an astounding concept, because the earth is quite massive, quite heavy. But if that doesn't move you, the next step should. And that is the following simple observation. If the sun is far more massive than is the earth, it pulls. And the earth also pulls. So you have these two dramatically strong forces pulling closer and closer and closer. Why doesn't the earth just get subsumed into the sun? And again, somewhere around maybe 60 million miles or 45 million miles, the rock turns to lava and the entire planet bursts into flame at some 20 million miles. Why isn't the earth just pulled in and life ceases to exist on a planet? Now that is an interesting question, because gravity we're very much familiar with. But what they didn't teach you in 6th grade, and you probably have to get to 8th grade science or maybe 10th grade science to learn, was that there's a counterforce called centrifugal force. Centrifugal force is the force of motion. A body in motion, you're probably familiar with the law of physics, a body in motion will tend to stay in motion. The earth is hurtling around in orbit. There's a centrifugal force because it began in motion, so that force keeps it, but that force has a rotating force that wants to expand ever out. The gravitational force wants to pull the earth closer. The centrifugal force keeps it because it's trying to pull further out. And as a result, the earth stays where it is. But here's the kicker. You know that the gravitational force must be exactly matched to the centrifugal force to the iota. Meaning, if the earth began its orbit when it began a tad slower, not exactly the speed it's traveling, it would remain at that speed. But if that speed were a tad slower, the centrifugal force would not be strong enough. As a result, the gravitational force would overcome it, and the earth would be swallowed up by the sun. On the other hand, if the earth was going a tad too quickly, the centrifugal force would be too strong and it would hurtle out into space. It would break away from the gravitational force and we'd be some billions of miles out there. The exact match of the gravitational force to the centrifugal force. But that's not the punchline. The sun and the earth are not the only known bodies in space. There are 8 or 9 other planets. Each of their gravitational force has to be exactly matched against the centrifugal force. But the entire local planetary system is also hurtling through space, through the Milky Way galaxy. It has to be balanced out against other suns, and each of those suns is spinning, and each of the galaxies are spinning. Every single body in the space that you'll see anyone in the sky is in constant motion with the gravitational force of it balanced against the centrifugal force, motion upon motion, hundreds of billions of planets, hundreds of billions of galaxies, all moving, all perfectly balanced. And at that point you have to say the words, that is astounding. Marabu Masech HaShem, how wondrous is your creation. And I believe that that is exactly what the Talmidim was saying to Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. You ask us to fear Hashem as we do mortal man, a man who puts his head down on the pillow and cannot will himself back to life the next morning. When he puts his head down, he doesn't even know whether he's going to open his eyes the next morning. He gets one lone microbe that somehow comes into his body and he's doubled over in pain, he's racked with pain, and then he's on his deathbed. You ask us to fear Hashem, the creator of the heavens and the earth, as we do a basar v'dam, a mortal man? And the Talmidim's question had a tremendous position to it. But interestingly enough, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai did not say, Tadakta, you're right, I'm wrong. He didn't throw in the towel. He said the words, halavai. Not only am I right, halavai, it should only be that you fear Hashem as you do man. And I'd like to stop on what was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's answer. And I think the easiest way to understand that answer is to analyze a very interesting phenomenon called a Beis Yaakov girl on a date. Now, I don't know your experiences, but what I've found is that most Beis Yaakov girls will go wherever you like on a first date, but not out to eat. I don't want to go to a restaurant. I don't want to go out to eat. We want to go watch. Whatever you want to do, but not to a restaurant. You may be curious as to why it is that she wouldn't want to go out to eat. By the way, not only a first date, oftentimes in a second, and maybe even a third. Well, the answer really is quite simple. If you'll ask her privately, she'll say, well, I don't know, I'm going to be on a date where I'm going to slurp the spaghetti and crunch the lettuce. It's embarrassing. And as a result, she'll go anywhere else but a restaurant. Okay. Here is a very simple thought. Let's assume this young woman we'll make her 21 years of age. Okay. Now, she began eating 3 meals a day at the age, let's say, of 3 years old. Now, from the time she's 3, eating 3 meals a day, 365 days in a year, she's been eating 1,000 meals a year for the past 18 years. She's eaten 18,000 meals. Not once did she worry about, how do I eat the spaghetti? Do I slurp it? Do I crunch it? My mouth closed? Or whatever. Not once did she ever have such a worry. Now all of a sudden, I can't go on a date because I don't know how to eat. What do you mean you don't know how to eat? 18,000 meals later, you don't know how to eat? But the answer to that really is quite simple. You see, I'm going to be in front of someone who I really want to impress. Someone's going to be watching me who I'm very, very conscious of the way they look at me. And we human beings tend to act very differently when we're being observed than when we're b'chadrei chadarim alone and no one sees us. And my friends, I believe that is exactly what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying to his Talmidim. One simple recognition. Forget the fact that Hashem created this vast known universe. Forget the fact that Hashem created water and fire and everything else that's contained within this world. One simple recognition. Hashem is here, present. Not that Hashem is 13 billion miles up there in Shemayim. Hashem is right here in the room. That recognition will bring a person to a greater level of Yirah Shamayim than even studying the most advanced science textbooks, the most advanced physics textbooks. Yes, that is a way to come to Yirah Shamayim, but this simple understanding that Hashem is present right here will bring a person to a much higher level of Yiras Shamayim than studying the most advanced physics, the most advanced understanding of Hashem's creation. And Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's answer to his Talmidim is, that goes much further. And I'd like to share with you a very interesting observation, and that is how the Mesilas Yesharim describes davening. People typically make a mistake about tefillah. They daven to Hashem somewhere up in Shemayim, as in, Hashem, can you hear me? 13 billion light years up there in Shemayim. And says the Mesilas Yesharim, that is a tos. That is a fallacy, it's a mistake. And tefillah by definition means that I'm speaking to Hashem right here, present and accounted for. I'm speaking to Hashem here, and he says literally like I'm speaking to my friend. My friend may respond, may not respond, but I'm speaking to him. It says Mesilas Yesharim, that is tefillah, that is davening. And when you think about that single concept before you daven, it changes your tefillah in a very real sense. I was a high school Rebbe for many years, and oftentimes I would counsel the guys to use that as a Musar exercise. One time the guys even caught me. I would put a chair in front of me before Shemona Esrei. You have to be careful. Hashem has no goof, and you have to be careful not to imagine a goof. But they go, oh, Rebbe, we know the chair you're trying to manage. Oh, yeah, we get it. But the bottom line is, I found a very interesting experience when I would tell the guys to use this exercise. And you'll excuse me for going through what would happen to some of the guys. We'll take a guy, Shmuel. Shmuel is a 17-year-old fellow, a good guy in yeshiva. He just heard the Musar Shmuz about how to daven. So before Shemona Esrei, before he takes 3 steps forward, he thinks, I'm literally going to speak to Hashem right there. And he begins. And he begins davening. And he also listened to the second part of the Musar Shmuz. The second part of the Musar Shmuz was the fact that whenever you daven, it is a wise idea to personalize your Shemona Esrei, to make a request for something that you need, whether it be big, whether it be small, and ask Hashem for it. So here's the way the Shemona Esrei works. The first part's pretty good, till he gets to Shema Kolenu, and he's about ready to ask, and here it goes. Hashem, God, Avinu, my I'm not sure I'm supposed to quote. I know I'm so allowed to talk here in Shema Kolenu. I kind of need. Oh, this is weird. I hope nobody sees me. I need help with. I don't know how to say this, but I help. This is really weird. I hope nobody's watching me. Do you understand what's happening? This fellow's 17 years old, probably been davening for 12 years, maybe 14 years, but this might be the first time that he's actually communicating with his Creator. But you see, that's the essence of davening. Davening is little me speaking to the Creator of the heavens and the earth, making my requests, making my bakashas, recognizing that Hashem is the Creator, the one who is in charge of my life. And that understanding is a vastly different way of davening. However, it is very, very difficult. And the reason why it's very difficult is because we are chomri, we are physical. And every part of the physical being that I am denies the existence of Hashem. I relate to everything in this world through 5 senses. Anything that I can feel, that I can touch, that I could smell, that I could hear, exists. But if my 5 senses deny it, then my very, very existence screams out that it's not here. And when you daven, the first recognition that you have to come to is that it is a stira, an absolute contradiction to anything physical, because Hashem is not limited by physicality. Hashem is beyond all physicality, and therefore it's a difficult jump forward for me to speak to my Creator and learn to go beyond the limitations of my senses, to learn to feel Hashem's presence, and to learn to relate to Hashem when it's difficult. And this is something that, again, I've found over and over is a challenge for people who come from many, many years of davening, many, many years of what would you'd assume is a religious experience. And I'll share with you one more observation from my high school Rebbe days. As you probably know, they put the Rebbeim facing the wrong way. I'm not sure who made this arrangement, but the crowd faces this way, but the Rebbeim face the wrong way. Now, the first time that I was up there facing the wrong way, I have to admit that it was a little uncomfortable, because davening is supposed to be an emotional experience, and the crowd's looking at it like it's. Again, I don't know who made the arrangements, but the bottom line is that's what it is. Now, what I did find was that it offered a very unique vantage point, and that is it allowed me to watch the guys when they would daven. And if you watch guys when they daven, many guys daven beautifully. You could see the kavanah, you could see the communication. Some guys daven, all right. And then there are guys who do the warp speed fly catching routine. That routine goes something like this. Touch my say, up, catch a fly, and about 3 minutes later, maybe not even 3 minutes, down, head down with the tefillin, sound asleep. All right, let's imagine we got one of our guys, we'll call him David, who's one of our warp speed fly catchers, and I'm watching him day after day, morning after morning, time after time, same routine. His Shemona Esrei begins and ends pretty much at the same moment in time, and that's his routine. Okay. One evening, I come into the Beis Medrash, and there's David with a tehillim in hand, and he's shuckling, and there are tears coming down his eyes, and he is really davening. And I walk over to David and I say, David, what's up? Oh, Rabbi, I don't know if you heard, but my kid brother, car accident, is critical. I don't even know if it's going to make it. It's terrible. He goes back to his tehillim and shuckling. Now, this part didn't really happen, folks, but David, I'm sorry to hear that, but what are you doing? Rabbi, I told you, my kid brother operating at surgery. I got to daven. I got to, excuse me. And he goes back, David, what are you doing? Rabbi, I told you, my kid brother, I'm davening. David, there's nobody here. You're talking to the walls. There's nobody here. And it's an empty Beis Medrash. What are you doing? But you see, my friends, what David is doing is something that innately, intuitively, every Jew knows. And there's an understanding that Hashem is present. Now, oftentimes we're so busy, we're so caught up with the activities of our life that we don't discover that reality until we're falling down that cliff as the car is rolling over and we cry, Hashem, help! Not Hashem 13 billion light years up Shemayim, Hashem right here, help me. But that understanding is inborn in the human, it's in my heart, and that knowledge is there. It takes work to bring it to the core. It takes work to bring it to my conscious mind. But that understanding is there, and that understanding is something that requires working on. And understanding that idea is deep within me is something that's very key to becoming a really proper Eved Hashem. It is difficult to really daven that way. I'll share with you an interesting quote that I think illustrates this point. Everyone knows the famous quote that Neil Armstrong said when he first stepped on the moon. The quote was, "One small step for man, a giant step for mankind." Scripted, believe me, it was not his line. They worked on it for months. Scripted line. Okay. However, what's interesting to note is that the USA and the USSR at the time were engaged in the space war. And the reality is that the Soviet Union was really the victor in the space war. The reason why it was very important to the USA to land the man on the moon first was because the Soviet cosmonauts had actually won the first round in the victory. They put a man in space to orbit the Earth long before the USA was capable of it. And it's interesting to note the quote of Yuri Gagarin, who was the cosmonaut who first orbited the Earth. And his quote is as follows. This was his line. Now, keep in mind, he's landed, the press is all gathered around him, they're clicking away, and he gets the microphone, he says a few things, and one of the things he says is as follows. "Now I have proven that God does not exist, because I was there and didn't see him. I have proven that God doesn't exist, because I was in the heavens and didn't see him." Meaning, he's what we call a rocket scientist. God, are you here? No. Left? Right? No. You're not here. Ha ha! I've proven that God doesn't exist. Yishkayach, thank you. So we really send the man into space to make that discovery. I could have told you that, without your spending the billions of dollars to... Okay, now, Yuri Gagarin's fallacy is quite an obvious one. And that is, if you use the wrong instrument to measure a property, you're not going to get a good reading. If I take a scale and say, this beam of light, how much does it weigh? A pound, a half a pound, 2 pounds? You can measure luminosity, but you can't weigh the weight of light. I know you physicists, the physicists will tell you there's light has weight, but it's the wrong scale of measure. You measure brightness, but you don't measure weight of light. If you try to measure Hashem's physical presentation and physical existence, you will fail. Because Hashem has no physical manifestation. By definition, Hashem is Eino Guf. But this understanding that's deep within my heart that Hashem is present, that Hashem is there, is a inborn understanding that if a person works on, if a person thinks about, if a person concentrates on, it will change the way they daven, will change the way they exist. But it requires work. What Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying to his Talmidim was one simple point. To study physics and to study science is a fantastic idea, and it will bring you to your Shemayim. The Rishonim tell us the most assured way to come to your Shemayim is to study the Bria. But says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, it is a much more powerful concept. If you understand this one single idea that Hashem is present right here, that will bring you to a much greater understanding than all of these other things. That will bring you to a much deeper, much more fundamental idea. And this understanding is something that is inborn, intuitive, but requires an awful lot of work. And I want to share one more observation with you. As a bit of a student of human behavior, a while back I found that there was a interesting Ashkenazic minhag. You may have heard me mention this before, but it bears repeating. That Ashkenazic minhag was brought closely to light by watching the way guys would eat. If you ever notice, before guys eat, there's this sort of little mouth twitch that goes like this. And I noticed it time after time, that guys would go. I even noticed sometimes people would ask questions about something, and then they would go, and then they'd eat whatever they eat. But before they would ingest food or drink, there'd always be this little nervous twitch of their lips. One day, because I was rightly curious, I put my ear really, really close. And I heard, actually it's words. The words go like this. What? Oh. Oh. What language is that? It's a bracha. Oh. Shakanabiviro. I never heard that bracha. Is it like, what Masech is it in? Bracha? No, I don't know. But gentlemen, let me share with you a very simple observation. Rabbi Victor Miller would say as follows. The words of a bracha are as follows. Baruch Ata Hashem. Blessed be you, Hashem, present and accounted for right here. Blessed be you, Hashem. Not 13 billion light years away, here. Elokeinu, our God, Melech HaOlam, King of the universe. Shehakol, that everything, Nihiyeh Bidvaro, came into existence and exists with your words. Could you imagine the effect on me if I would say that once a day with a recognition of what I'm saying? That Hashem, you created and keep the world in existence, but not just that, that you're here. Could you imagine if twice a day, once in the morning and once at night, I would say that? The ironic part about it is that we Jews say those words 100 times a day. 100 times a day I stop my busyness, I stop my activity, and I come to the recognition that Hashem is present, Hashem is right here. If I could really ever grasp that, feel it, understand it, it would radically change my existence and radically change the entire mahus of my life. I think the Talmidim's position and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's answer each are very, very valid. What the Talmidim was saying was a very powerful point. And that point is, look at the world, its vastness, its complexity. Look at the harmonious systems. Look at this and see its creator. The world screams out, there's a master to this binyan. That will bring a person to a tremendous level of Yireh Shamayim. But Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says there's a step that's much, much more powerful. One simple understanding that Hashem is here. The reason why the Beis Yaakov girl won't eat on the first date is because somebody's watching me. That awareness that Hashem is here will change my behavior, change my thoughts, change my life more than any other concept that I could ever come to. Because if I get it, that Hashem is here, it changes everything. Needless to say, my davening is a different davening. Needless to say, the way I speak to other people is different. The way I react, the way I conduct myself. And davening ultimately is one of the great exercises in that single recognition. And if before the next Shemona Esrei you stop and spend just a moment, you don't want to interrupt between the Tefillah B'tzibur, but take a moment to concentrate on the fact that little me, I'm going to stand in front of my Creator and speak, literally like a friend, like my friend is there, he may listen, may not. That's how I'm going to address Hashem. That hakara will change your davening and change much of the way you live your life. I'd like to close with a story which I think well defines this point. It's actually a very interesting story because it was about Rabbi Saul Salanter, who was known as the father of the Muslim movement. And the story was that one day Rabbi Saul was being driven by a Polish wagon driver, and they were on this back road somewhere way away from any human being. And at a certain point, this Gentile Polish wagon driver stopped the horses, looked left, looked right, saw no one around. He unhitched the horse and allowed it to graze on the field. Now Rabbi Saul understood what was happening. The Polish driver was stealing. He realized that the farmer wasn't around, so he unhitched his horse and allowed his horse to steal the farmer's hay, farmer's grass. So Rabbi Saul didn't know what to do. So at a certain point, Rabbi Saul said, he's watching, go quick, he's watching. And the farmer, the driver understood what's happening. He quickly grabs the horse, hitches it back, looks over his shoulder for the farmer with a shotgun, sees no farmer, no shotgun, realizes that he's been had, and he turns back to Rabbi Saul and said, you lied to me. Why'd you lie to me? There's no one watching? Rabbi Saul says, he's watching. Now gentlemen, I want to share with you the punchline of that story. The reason why Rabbi Saul said those words was because he understood that a simple driver, a simple Gentile wagon driver could understand that concept. You don't have to have a doctorate in philosophy. You don't have to study the world religions. Intuitive, inborn in the human psyche and human consciousness is the idea, is the knowledge that Hashem is right here. And that idea is present, is right there in every Jew's heart, is knowledge that's there in every human being's heart. No matter how sophisticated, no matter how unsophisticated. Many times our vast knowledge and our vast sophistication corrupts our straight understanding, and sometimes you have to take a much more simplistic approach. This understanding that Hashem is here and present is one of the most powerful concepts that can literally change a person's life. All of my guf, all of my physicality denies it. Intuitively I know it, and one of the great challenges to bring that concept to the fore, to fully understand it. Hashem grant us the wisdom, understanding, and ability to put this